So then finally we get to the goal, or prayojana. So this is, of course, we know that the prayojana is prema. And this is discussed in this particular Sandarbha called the Priti Sandarbha. This is a bit of a long Sandarbha, so I don't know how I'm going to do this, but anyway, a little technical also. But just to complete everything, we should discuss the goal in life. A process is not meaningful unless we know what the goal is. You can't achieve a goal unless you know what it is. So if you have a process without a goal, or without knowing the goal, it doesn't make too much sense. So if you go to university and study but you don't have a goal in it, then you don't go anywhere. So with anything, we do need to define our goal quite accurately. Some people will be more inspired by a more detailed definition of the goal and description of the goal. Some may be satisfied with a little more vague idea, but actually the more precise we can get in defining our goal, then it's easier to concentrate on that precise form, and therefore it becomes very attractive to us and we can meditate on it more and more. So in that sense, the goal is very important for us. And the goal also will define the sadhana. So we know that if we do Vaidhi Bhakti, we attain Vishnu, or we will attain Krishna with a Aishvarya aspect to him in Dwarka, or Aishvarya Goloka. And if we perform Raganuga Bhakti, then we go to Krishna in Gokul. So the sadhana and the goal are intimately related to each other. And if we do a certain sadhana, we get a certain goal. We do a different sadhana, we get a different goal. So if we choose the particular goal of Krishna, and then within Krishna we choose Vrindavan Krishna over Dwarka Krishna, then we'll have to define our sadhana accordingly. So we'd have to know to some extent about the goal. We cannot understand everything until you realize it. You can talk about Krishna and everything, but the final thing is the realization. But in order to realize Krishna, we have to know something about him in the first place, and do the sadhana with that goal of Krishna in mind. So, Jiva Goswami starts out in a very general way by saying that every human being has a goal, and that goal is ultimately happiness. We don't know what type of happiness it could be, but some want to be happy. Yeah? Happiness may be surviving, like a virus is happy just to survive and jump from one body to another and flourish like that. Or a dog is happy because he gets a place to sleep at night and gets some food. Okay, that's happiness for him. Generally animals have their eating, sleeping, mating, defending. If they can do all that nicely, they're happy. That's their happiness. Human being can also be happy with that, but that puts him like an animal. He's called a four-legged animal if he's just stuck on that level. So most human beings do have other aspirations, not just to refine eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but actually get something else out of life. So that goal of happiness is therefore a little bit different from that of the animals. We struggle to understand what is that happiness, how to get that happiness. And this is the problem with everybody in the material world. They're looking for the happiness, they try to get it from the material things, and it doesn't work out, and just get dissatisfied. And then try to get something else, it doesn't work either. So happiness, the striving for happiness is innate in the human being, but how to get the happiness, this is where the problem lies. So we get a happiness and destruction of suffering. So if we go to the scripture, then we'll find out that the only happiness ultimately is Priti or Prema. Okay? And that is a relationship with the Lord. That's where we get the happiness. So we say, well, I can't have a relationship with another human being and be happy. Well, that's what everybody tries, but it doesn't seem to work out because bodies are temporary, people are imperfect, so we end up with a lot of problems with that. Besides that, if we accept scriptures, then we'll understand that we are Nitya Krishna Das. That our primary relationship is not with other human beings, but with Supreme Lord Krishna. Certainly we have relationships with other jivas, but the main relationship, primary relationship, is with Krishna. So that relationship will make us happy. So from one point of view, why Krishna? Why Supreme Lord? Because that's just how things are. Jivas are little particles, like rays of the sun, and Krishna is like the sun. So there's an automatic relationship between the Lord and the jiva. Now, rationally, we can just kind of analyze it into why the Lord, because He is eternal, He is infinite, He has the highest bliss. He is the source of all bliss. He is eternal. He is completely conscious, perfect in all ways, with all perfect qualities. So, therefore, why not the Lord? That's how we can be blissful, if we go to the source of all bliss. So, in the Upanishads it describes that you can multiply human's bliss by 10, then by 100, and then multiply that by 100, and you can go from human to Devata, to Prajapatis, to Brahma, to Shiva. Like they get 100 times more happiness, 100 times more happiness. But the Supreme Lord's happiness is much beyond the happiness of the material world, beyond Brahma's happiness. So therefore it's very, very unique. So this is discussed in the Taittiriya Upanishad, part of the Vedas. So the Lord is blissful by nature, and He has the highest bliss of all. So naturally, if the jiva wants to get bliss, then he should relate to the Supreme Lord. So this is the ultimate quality of the Supreme Lord. We can think of all sorts of qualities in the Lord, such as He knows everything, He's very great, He's very powerful, He creates the world, and He's very beautiful, whatever. But ultimately, the ultimate nature is the bliss. That's His essential nature. The Ananda is the very nature of the Supreme Lord. Just like the sun is light, so the nature of the Lord is bliss. So naturally, the jiva should go towards that Supreme Lord. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives an interesting analogy. He says it's like little particles. Little particles tend to, like we have atoms and then protons and stuff, and then we have the electrons going around the atoms, etc., like this. So there seems to be a natural attraction between entities. So there's a natural attraction between conscious entities, Supreme Lord and jivas. Of course, we have a natural attraction between jiva and jiva also. And that's why people are attracted to other people, and we try to get our happiness from that. But then we have the big consciousness, that is Supreme Lord. So that's like the sun. And then we have all the other little jivas, like little planets, and they're going around the sun. Yeah? So they're not independent. They're all attracted to the sun, and they revolve around the sun. So in that way, it's natural for the jiva to relate to the Supreme Lord. And then Bhaktivinoda further says that, and therefore this is what the Ras Leela illustrates in one sense. Everybody going in a circle like this, and Krishna in the center. So He's the center, and all the gopis are attracted to Him and moving in a circle like this. It's like the planets are moving around the sun. Or about Meru in the Vedic version. The jiva, of course, was defined in the Paramatma Sandarbha as being a small particle of consciousness, but similar to the Lord in being conscious and having some qualities, etc. But He's also a little bit different because He is limited, He can fall into ignorance, and when He's in ignorance, He doesn't know the Supreme Lord at all. So this is the misfortune of the jivas in the material world, ignorance, no knowledge of the Lord. The second ignorance is he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't even know he's Atma, that he is a conscious living entity, particle. No knowledge of his relationship with the Lord, or that he is Atma. So this brings about bondage in the material world or conditioning. And it produces karma, and it produces suffering without beginning, anadi suffering. So the jiva in ignorance ends up in the suffering condition, life after life. If the jiva gets knowledge, that means he recognizes that Supreme Lord, and then begins to serve him. By doing that, then the jiva gets the highest bliss. So this is the goal for the jiva. He wants happiness. He should know the Lord, recognize the Lord, serve the Lord, and then he gets his goal achieved. That is, he becomes happy. So, if the jiva destroys his ignorance and he recognizes the Lord, then naturally he also recognizes himself as a small particle of consciousness, not his material body. He's different from the material world. And when these two things happen, the recognition of Lord, recognition of that he's an Atma, then no more suffering in the material world. This is emphasized because in the impersonal philosophy, ignorance is also analyzed as the root cause of all of our problems in the material world. So we remove ignorance by knowledge, and by knowledge we get liberation from the material world. So, similar. Destruction of suffering takes place naturally. It looks the same, but it is actually a little different. So, once the jiva gets that knowledge, and it is fixed, knowledge of the Lord, knowledge of the Atma, destroys the suffering, then he's in an eternal position of happiness. So then we can argue, well, why is it eternal? If the jiva gets out of ignorance and understands he's eternal, has got knowledge or whatever, how can that be eternal? And the reason is that the destruction of ignorance in the jiva is caused by the Supreme Lord. It's the man of the Lord's Shakti, or his quality of revelation. It's the knowledge of the Supreme Lord himself which stimulates the jiva's knowledge. So the Lord is full of perfect knowledge, stimulates the jiva to have nice knowledge. So, and then the Lord guarantees, it is eternal. You get this eternally once you get it. So the whole process of bhakti then is to actually get the invocation of the Lord's mercy so that we can get that Shakti of knowledge on us. And then it gets fixed in the jiva. So why is it eternal? Because the Lord wills it to be eternally in the jiva like that. So what we call sakshatkar, or meeting with the Lord, is there. But who is he? He can be in a very vague form, no qualities, no particular form. Or he can have particular form and qualities as Bhagavan or Paramatma. So the Brahman aspect is no particularization. We meet something very wonderful, supreme, peaceful, existing forever. And the other is we meet the Lord with a form and qualities and with a relationship. So realization of Bhagavan and Paramatma is much superior to the Brahman realization. Actually the bliss involved in Brahman is the negative bliss of absence of material suffering. So this Priti, or this prema, is a realization of the Lord's particular qualities. And among his qualities, of course, is affection or love. So the greatest quality, therefore, of the Lord, we say, is Ananda, but that is expressed through love or Priti. And so therefore we have to establish that relationship of love, then we get the bliss. So the Lord is Ananda by nature, but that's expressed as having unconditional prema or Priti. So if we get that Priti, then automatically suffering is destroyed. If we don't have that Priti, if we do sadhana of jnana, then we can get out of the material world, but we don't realize any of the qualities of the Lord. So if we get Priti, then automatically we must see the Lord with his form, qualities and activities, etc. Okay, so once we manifest the affection for the Lord, when that reaches a level, then the Lord reveals himself. And we get full realization of the Lord, or to our maximum. Okay. So that happiness of realizing the Lord is realizing the Lord with his form and with his all his wonderful qualities. And that happiness, and we can say Priti or Prema, are non-different. We realize the Lord, we realize that Prema or Priti. So ultimately that Priti is the Lord's main quality also. We can equate that with Ananda, we can call it Priti or Prema, or we can also call it Rasa. They all go together as the main aspect of the Supreme Lord. So that Priti or that Prema is the supreme goal of life, because that's what gives the happiness, that's what gives the bliss. So as we first said, happiness was the goal. But what type of happiness, how, whatever. So it means the real happiness is establishing a relationship with the Lord and that Priti, that affectionate relationship of love. That gives the happiness. That's the goal of the jiva. And the jiva has a capacity to experience that. Sometimes we have the word kaivalya. It usually has a negative meaning, which is the impersonal meaning, oneness. But we can also use it to mean prema, because the word kaivalya comes from the word kevala, and kevala means pure. So we're in a state of purity, then we can realize the Lord. So that we say kaivalya is ultimately the goal of the jiva, which is the same as realizing the Lord. So what is that meeting with the Lord or seeing the Lord? It can be internal, and that's the first thing that happens. If you reach bhava stage, it's largely internal realization of the Lord. But then we also have the external realization where we actually see Krishna. This is superior to the internal realization, but it's a little more advanced, and you have to develop your senses, your spiritual senses very nicely, then you can perceive the Lord. However, the Lord also comes as avatars, and when he displays himself, then we get a chance to see that particular form. So that's considered to be very, very satisfying. If we're qualified, we meet that form, we realize that form, and we get the highest bliss. So, of course, when he comes, only the qualified get to see him properly, and the materialists and the demons, they see the opposite. They don't appreciate him, and he may also instill fear in them or kill them even. So who are these people that the Lord does not cooperate with? Those who are averse to the Lord. They don't cooperate with the Lord. They don't recognize the Lord. They call them bahirmukha jivas. They're not interested in the Lord at all. Huh? So they are of different types also. Even if they see the Lord when he comes as avatar, they don't recognize him. They're still so absorbed in material enjoyment, they pay no attention. Huh? They have an opportunity to realize the sweetness of the Lord, but they don't take it. Huh? At the same time, they don't disrespect him. They just don't appreciate it. So there's no insult there, so it's not so bad. Huh? There are other people who are also bahirmukha who disrespect the Lord, like the demons, Shishupala, etc. So these, of course, are very, very much criticized. And even we get persons like Indra, who will disrespect the Lord. So, he doesn't appreciate the Lord's sweetness at all, and rather he insults the Lord in many ways. So then we have those who really hate the Lord. They're not just, they don't know about the Lord, but they actually hate the Lord. They may see the Lord, recognize the Lord, but they still hate him. Like Kalayavana. So, why this will happen? That's because some people are conditioned not to like sweetness. They like the bitter things. So they see the Lord, they go, okay, it's very sweet, but I don't like that. So they don't like the Lord in that way. Others will see him in a distorted way, and then they hate him. They don't even appreciate that the Lord has a beautiful body, wonderful features, etc. They just hate him, and then they see all of his qualities are wrong in a very distorted way. So the wrestlers who fought with Krishna in Kamsa's arena are like that. They couldn't appreciate anything about him. So then there are others who they like the people who see him in a distorted way. That's them. And then we have these people are all these people. They lack the proper understanding or jnana. They lack bhakti and prema. So they're deprived of advancing. They can't accept anything that's expressing bliss and sweetness. So, though these people are averse to the Lord in various degrees, either there's neutral indifference or hatred of different sorts, they can also get delivered, they can change. Just like a person who doesn't like sugar candy because he's sick, if he takes a sugar candy, then eventually he likes to eat sugar. So, though they are averse to the Lord and His sweetness, at a certain point in time, by mercy of devotees, eventually they can change. So in the Vishnu Purana it says Shishupal, who hated the Lord and couldn't appreciate his wonderful qualities and whatever, in spite of being his relative, finally he saw the Lord when the Sudarshan Chakra was coming at him. Then he saw the beautiful form of the Lord, but it was too late. But at that time all of his anarthas had disappeared, his hatred had disappeared. And then he got liberation and went to the spiritual world. So the only reason he could see the Lord was all of these anarthas had been dissipated, and his heart had been purified by constant meditation and hatred on the Lord. So now we talk about the external vision of the Lord. So some people see the Lord, but even they can't see him properly, so that's a problem. But if one can see the Lord externally, very, very good. So in the Bhagavatam, it said the persons like Brahma first see the Lord by yoga practice. That means internally, and then he appears before them. So that's the good fortune of the Lord, if you can see the Lord directly. So Narada Muni is a person who got the internal vision and the external vision. So he describes in the first canto, when I sing his glories, the Lord who makes any place that he touches holy and who is attracted to those who sing his glories, quickly appears in my heart as if being called. So that's the internal aspect of Narada Muni's relationship with the Lord. O best of the Kurus, eager to engage in the worship of Krishna, Narada Muni stayed constantly in Dwarka, which was always protected by the arms of Govinda. So then he would go to Dwarka and he could see him directly. That's the external vision of the Lord. So both were there for Narada Muni. So if one attains the Lord by internal or external means, then what happens? So that means one has prema, but one still has the material body. So that's described in 11th canto. One who does not desire anything within this world, who has controlled his sense, who has fixed his intelligence on me, who regards heaven and hell equally, and whose mind is completely satisfied in me, finds only happiness wherever he goes. So material world no longer matters to him. He's satisfied with the Lord. And so he says he regards heaven and hell equally. So, then when he gives up his body, what happens to him? So, we have these options, the 5 types of liberation. Salokya, you can stay on the same planet as the Lord, Vaikuntha. You can have Sharsti, get powers like the Lord, so you get all sorts of wonderful things you can do with your mind and whatever. Sarupya, you get a spiritual form like the Lord. Samipya, you can approach the Lord closely. And Sayuja means entering into the body of the Lord. So that's the one we don't want. So by this, when it's not with devotee, or it's not with advanced devotees, Salokya, Sarsti, and Samipya and all that, and Sarupya, it's internal meeting. You're on the planet of the Lord, you got a form like the Lord, so it's Salokya, Sarupya, and you got powers. And internal vision of the Lord, which means no active service. So it's like Shantarasa. If we have Samipya, which means closeness, then you get external relationship with the Lord also. If you have Sayuja, then there's merging in Brahman. So it's like a state of deep sleep. Sleep with no dreams. So all of these types of liberation can be permanent. You can get fixed in any of these things. So if you get to Salokya, that means get the Vaikuntha in the spiritual world. It's no return. It's permanent. And that's emphasized in the Brahma Sutras. The last sutra, the Brahma Sutra is divided into 4 parts. And the last part is Prayojana. Third part is Avidya. The first 2 parts are the Sambandha. So there's 4 books of the Brahma Sutra. The last one is Prayojana. And then the last sutra is Anavriti Sabda. There's no return to the material world once you got that goal, prema, since that's what scriptures say, Sabdat. Anavriti means no return. So that's the very last sutra. You don't return. It's a permanent position. And of course other Upanishads will say that Sana Punaravartate does not return. So we may have scriptural references to people from the spiritual world who come to the material world. So that is considered to be an occasional appearance for the Lord's pastimes. And the devotee enters into the Lord's pastimes within the material world. And then he goes back and has his relationship eternally with the Lord in the spiritual world. So there's no coming out of that Vaikuntha. So, if you get Sarupya, then you get a form like the Lord. That's described in the 3rd canto, where there's a description of all the servants of the Lord that look like Vishnu forms there, and they're wandering around Vaikuntha. So these forms of the devotees there are without karma and pure and eternal. They're eternal forms. And it's described there also that one who gets liberated, a jiva who's liberated, then he makes a form like those forms for that particular jiva who goes to the spiritual world. And sometimes the material body is equal to the spiritual body. We see the case of Dhruva or Narada Muni. And they had a body and then suddenly it became the spiritual body. Sharshti, that is attainment of powers. Devotees are not really too much interested in that, but they're mentioned like in Chandogya Upanishad. He wanders freely in all the worlds. He controls all beings, except there's a whole section in Chandogya Upanishad describing all the different powers that one can get in the spiritual world. Now, however, the liberated jiva cannot create, maintain, or destroy universes, what to speak of creating the powers of Vaikuntha. So he's limited. He can't have all the powers of the Supreme Lord. They can get all these siddhis like the yogis, but it's partial. It's not like the Supreme Lord. And these powers are also eternal. The Lord gives them to him eternally. Samipya, closeness to the Lord. So this is a nice quality. It's a direct meeting with the Lord. So it's considered to be superior to all the other ones. Because seeing the Lord externally is considered to be, a higher level. So an example of this is Kardama Muni. By pure bhakti for the Lord, Kardama Muni attained the position of an associate of the Lord in the spiritual world. So that Samipya, he gets to see him directly. Sayuja, this is the one we don't want. So we see the demons often get this. Aghasura was killed by Krishna, he gets Sayuja. Even such a person, in the merged state, he gets a little bit of bliss by the mercy of the Lord. And that's why the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, when a person is liberated and enters the Lord, he experiences bliss and his all desires fulfilled. But this bliss is still a little amount of bliss compared to the bliss of being an associate of the Lord and serving him. So, you could attain Brahman, and then from that go to the spiritual world and serve the Lord. It's possible. So there's what is called Krama Mukti. You go from higher planets, and then you get liberation. So similarly, you can go from liberation, Brahman state, to Supreme Lord. But there's a little bit of a thing there. What is that Brahman state? So an example is Ajamil. Detaching his mind from the sense object with full concentration, he absorbed his mind in the Brahman, a form of the Lord, and the object of realization. So that's described in the Bhagavatam. He concentrated on Brahman first of all. When his intelligence then became fixed on the form of the Lord, he saw the persons before him whom he had previously seen. Seeing them, he bowed his head. After seeing those forms, he gave up his body at that holy place on the Ganga river and immediately attained a spiritual body as an associate of the Lord. So first he got to the Brahman realization, then he got to the Bhagavan realization. So it's possible to go beyond that also. So the question may be asked, well, everybody goes out of the material world because they either go to Brahman or they go to Vaikuntha, then the world will be empty. So then the answer is no. The universe never becomes empty. There's always jivas that are going to come into that universe. And that's eternal in the time, from beginning, or no beginning to no end. There's always jivas coming into the universe, so it can never get exhausted of jivas. So, we don't see all the jivas at this point in time. Some are in the material worlds, in different universes. Some are resting inside Mahavishnu. So even if we empty out all these universes, still there's the jivas inside Mahavishnu. So they'll come up and they'll enter into the universe and they'll start like that. So in this way, there's no such thing as world being empty of jivas, because there's a constant supply. Those that are in deep sleep in Mahavishnu will come out later on. So we describe these different types, the Sayuja and the Sarsti, Salokya, Samipya, etc. But Priti is above that. Those were the types of liberation. But Priti is above that. It's greater than the types of liberation. Of course, of those types of liberation, the greatest was Samipya, because he gets to see the Lord, but even then, that's considered, it may not be a very intimate relationship. So we can say that there must be some Priti in those relationships, because you get the Lord's mercy to go to Vaikuntha. So why do they enter in that state? Because their desire is, one, to get out of the material world and to go get Salokya or Sarupya or Sarsti. That's their goal. The goal is not the Lord. It's not prema. It's to go to that world. Is to get that body. So it's better, of course, than being in the material world, because it's spiritual. But still, you don't have that desire for the Lord. It's not so much related to the Lord, it's related to your own self, and I want a spiritual body, etc. So it's a lesser type of realization. So the real liberation is Priti, or Prema, or Kaivalya. So we discussed previously that the Puranas have 10 topics. Mahapuranas, major Puranas, have 10 topics. And one of those topics, the second to the last one, was Mukti. Asraya is the 10th topic, and Mukti is the 9th topic. So, ultimately, it could mean impersonal liberation, but Jiva Goswami says ultimately liberation, or that Kaivalya, means Priti. That's the real goal for the Jiva. And he says even there's the word Poshana. We have Sarga, Visarga, Sthana, and Poshana. Poshana means nourishing. How the Lord protects the devotees in the material world. So it's mercy and nourishing. But then mercy ultimately leads to prema. So again, Poshana is a synonym for prema also. So the devotees, as I said, actually want to serve the Lord, so they reject all these types of liberation. Devotees solely engaged in the service of Narayan never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, including all these 5 types, and the hellish planets are all the same. But intelligent devotees completely dedicated to me alone do not desire liberation, even if offered to them. So that again means these 5 types, they're not really interested in them. So therefore, these liberations are not so great. Bhakti and prema are much greater than that. So all sadhanas should lead to prema and whatever. O great sage, greater than those who are Jivan Mukta and greater than those who attain liberation is the devotee of Lord Narayana. Such a devotee who is in Shanta or other rasas is very rare even among 10 million people. Among those desiring liberation, one may become Jivan Mukta. The Jivan Mukta who does not commit offense to the Lord is perfect. Such a person attains liberation at death. So if you want to get liberation, even, you have to be pure with no offenses to the Lord. This famous verse is there. O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees having impure intelligence because of not having devotion to you think that they are liberated and become jivan muktas after severe penance and austerities, they fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for the lotus feet of you and your devotees. So you can get a type of liberation, jivan mukta, in this body, but you can fall from that position. So I said these other liberations were eternal, but if you get the realization when you're still in your body, then you can fall from that position if you disrespect the Lord and His devotee, and or His devotee. So if they offend the Lord, then no liberation. Okay, so now we come to the types of devotees who worship the Lord and surrender to the Lord. So we got those who haven't manifested that Priti, they're not at a high level. And those who have manifested it. So those who haven't manifested, they're called sadhakas, or persons who do sadhana. So those who manifested Priti, a little technical here, but there's different types, 3 types. There's the Shanta devotee. So they're fixed in the Lord, but no service. They don't have a desire for that service. They're satisfied. Okay, the Lord is merciful to me. That's it. They don't desire even closeness to the Lord. That was samipya. So then we have devotees who they identify themselves with a particular associate of the Lord, and they like to serve the Lord in a particular relationship. So that's superior. So they may pray to the Lord, or pray to get that Priti. And if they're praying also, they express their love for the Lord. Sometimes they will say, we can never attain the Lord, even if they haven't got the Lord. So that means they're simply hoping that the prema will be continuous and will never fail in the future. Sometimes they'll pray, oh, please get me out of this material world. But that's, again, it's not their conditioned souls at all, but it's just an expression of their prema. So, the second type was they identify themselves as an associate and they pray, let me do this service, like that. And the third one, they actually got a particular relationship with the Lord and they're serving in that relationship. So though the devotees reject these types of liberation, they may be useful to some degree. So that is why it is said in the 3rd canto, the devotees do not accept living on my planet, having similar powers, staying close to me, or having a similar form, what to speak of merging into me, when these things are offered, unless it involves service. So if they can be dovetailed in service of the Lord, then they may be acceptable. Okay, so in this way, Whether those who have Priti as their goal desire or do not desire something else other than their particular devotion, that is, these types of liberation, according to the type of bhakti, they anyway manifest themselves as an associate of the Lord endowed with all items necessary for service. So, if they don't pray for anything, and they just realize the Lord in service, then these things get supplied along with them. And what is necessary. And when the material world disappears, they get eternal position, they get eternal body, etc. So even without praying, many of these things are achieved. Okay. So what is Priti? Sarupa Priti. What does it actually mean? So it means happiness for oneself and affection for another person. So in relation to the Lord, if we have Priti for the Lord, that actually, if we have love for the Lord, that's actually the Lord Shakti, the Sarup Shakti of the Lord is coming out of the Jiva to develop love for Him. And we also call that Bhakti. So that affection is called prema also, which we can say is intense affection. An intense Priti is called prema. And Priti is also, we can say, a type of knowledge. We recognize the Lord. It's also a type of happiness related to the Lord. We saw Priti was equal to bliss. And this type of knowledge about the Lord and the bliss is non-material, beyond the material world. What is the Lord's bliss? What does He experience? Bliss from His Sarup, His very nature, His form is blissful by itself. And bliss from His Sarup Shakti. In other words, He has a Shakti. The Lord is the Sarup, and He has His Shakti that manifests from His Sarup, and that gives bliss to Him also. And that Sarup Shakti may be expressed through the devotees. So we say the Priti was the Sarup Shakti expressed in the devotees. So the Lord gets blissful when He sees the bhakti in His devotees. Or the Sarup Shakti itself may give bliss to Himself in terms of His powers. He has different Shaktis like Yogamaya Shakti or Itcha Shakti, etc. Aishwarya Shakti, and through that He becomes blissful. So the Lord gets blissful from devotees. Here's an example. O Brahmana, without the devotees who take shelter of only me, I do not desire to enjoy my own bliss from Sarup, or my 6 great qualities from the Sarup Shakti. So the devotee is very important for the Lord. Neither Brahma, Shiva, Sankarsha, and the goddesses of fortune, or even my own self are as dear to me as you, Uddhava. So Krishna says Uddhava, his friend, his devotee, is dearest. So he gets great bliss from that. So that Sarup Shakti and the bliss, we can say, is Hladini Shakti. Why does the Lord want bliss? It's because of Hladini Shakti, the bliss aspect of His Sarup Shakti. So by that Hladini Shakti, He feels blissful in His Sarup. By that bliss, he becomes a blissful person. By that Shakti, He gives other persons bliss. So He becomes blissful, other people become blissful. And then that bliss from the Hladini Shakti extends into the devotee. And then when it's expressed in the devotee, the Lord gets further bliss from seeing that Priti in the devotee. So there's an attraction between the Lord and His Sarup Shakti and the devotee who also expresses that Sarup Shakti. And this, we can say it's gravitational. They're attracted to each other. Oh. Broke it. Hare Krishna.
Not the first time. Not yet.
So therefore, the relationship of the devotee with the Lord is all under the purview of an inspiration of the Hladini Shakti. So that's why it's important. So when bhava is manifested, Rupa Goswami expresses that bhava means Hladini Shakti and Samvit Shakti combined, manifesting in the jiva. Then the Lord becomes attracted to that. Right. So that's expressed here, the mutual attraction between the devotee and the Lord. The pure devotee is my very heart. What pains him, pains me. I am the heart of the pure devotee. What pleases him, pleases me. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know more than they do. So this is the mutual relationship of love between the devotee and Supreme Lord. Okay, so that was the Sarupa Priti, that Hladini Shakti. Then there are secondary characteristics. Remembering and inspiring other devotees to remember the Lord who destroys sins, the devotees will develop hair standing on end in ecstasy of prema. So they like to preach to other persons. That's the secondary characteristic of that Priti. Then what are the types of it? Incomplete, an abhas, that's false, it's an imitation, and with goals other than the Supreme Lord. And sometimes, like the Devatas will express devotion, but why are they expressing devotion? Because we got our kingdom back. After Vritrasura was destroyed, then they were all blissful, but they got their kingdom back, so that's why they were blissful. So that's an abhas of Priti, it's false. So we get a slight manifestation of Priti, which can be like a little ray. So they can see the Lord, but they don't really have a goal of Priti, and they have a little attraction to the Lord's qualities. So that's an advancement over the false Priti, of course. Persons who only once absorb their minds in Krishna's lotus feet, even if it occurs in dreams or the slight attraction in the Lord's qualities, do not see the servants of Yama, since they have accomplished all atonement by that remembrance. Slight attraction to the Lord's qualities. Slight Priti. So the Priti manifests a little bit. It's not just slight. It's udaya avastha. It's rising up a little bit. So one has the goal of Priti for the Lord. We want to express our love of the Lord. And the impurities are almost destroyed. So it's called the first aspect of arousal. And then we have where more impurities are destroyed, there's only a little bit of impurity less. So it's quite manifested. And then we have complete manifestation. So there's no mixture, no anarthas at all. There's a quote from the Narada Pranchata. Mad with love for the Lord, he did not know his own happiness or suffering, was overflowing with the highest bliss, so great lady. So complete Priti. So we have the false Priti, then we have a slight, very slight inclination, then we get a little stronger one, and then we finally get complete Priti. Like that. And we can have Priti for different forms of the Lord, but ultimately Priti for Krishna is the highest, the best. Krishna possesses that form suitable for human pastimes to show the full capacity of his yoga maya. That form astonishes even the Lord of Vaikuntha. It is a pinnacle of auspicious qualities and enhances the beauty of his ornaments. So the whole point of Bhagavatam is to encourage everyone to worship Krishna among all the forms of the Lord. So if one develops Priti for Krishna, that's great good fortune. Okay. So we have different stages of Priti. One is Rati, this is Bhava, which is not exactly 100% pure yet. So there's a little bit of joy in this state. And Krishna manifests himself. And everything else becomes insignificant when Krishna manifests himself. Higher stage is called Prema. And in Prema, there's possessiveness. One has great possessiveness of the Lord. Anything that interrupts any cause of stopping it is useless. The Prema continues in spite of everything else. Pranaya, a great trust and familiarity. And this we find in Sakya Rasa, where there is familiarity with Krishna, very trust. And we say that respect disappears. Whereas in Prema we can have respect as in Dasya Rasa. Man means crookedness, a little bit of anger or a little bit of pride manifests within the Priti. That's called Man. And particularly we see in the gopis, they will become angry at Krishna sometimes. So this is actually higher than the pranaya aspect. And then the Lord will show fear when the devotee expresses anger. Sneha, this is again a positive one, affection, which means the heart melts. And then there'll be excessive tears just because of a little relationship with the Lord. And one cannot never be fully satisfied with the Lord. But more intense is called raga. Here the sneha was heart melting, so you become very soft and your emotions are very easily expressed. Raga means extreme desire, and we cannot bear separation from the Lord at any moment. So it turns sorrow into happiness and meeting, and happiness into sorrow and separation. And anuraga, which is only expressed in Madhurya Rasa. This means newness in the object of love. Krishna appears always newer and newer, never boring, ever fresh. Okay, and then the final stage is Mahabhava. This is the highest stage, expressed only in the gopis and Radharani. When anuraga becomes madness because of unequal astonishment, it's called Mahabhava. When that appears, one cannot tolerate blinking of the eye, and a kalpa passes like a moment during union. One feels a moment of separation to be a kalpa. In both conditions, union and separation, the Sattvika Bhavas manifest continually in the greatest udipta state. So very intense ecstatic symptoms at all times. That's Mahabhava, that's the highest state of all, expressed in Madhurya Rasa and ultimately in Radharani. Okay, I think I'll stop there. This is the different types of bhakti now. Okay. Okay, any questions?
Just explaining those 5 different types of adoration, you said that they were permanent, but Sayuja, I didn't think was actually permanent. So at some points they fall down to the bird and take birth.
That was explained a little later on where it says that Jiva Mukta can fall. So that's the explanation that Vishwanath gives, that when you get Brahman state in this body, then you insult the Lord, you can fall from that state. If you don't insult the Lord, then you can get permanent mukti and sit in the Brahman forever.
Remain brahmacharya forever.
Yeah. Of course, there's I think in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita there in the commentaries, Sanatana Goswami said it's possible in some cases to advance beyond that by the great mercy of devotees of Krishna, but it's kind of rare also. But it's possible. Anything is possible by the Lord's mercy, but a little difficult because they don't perceive anything.
It's generally understood brother yogi isn't permanent because the innate relationship with Krishna is not properly fulfilled.
Yeah.
Some people they're satisfied.
Yeah, just like some people are satisfied in the material world also. So it's also anadi. People continue in if they so want to, they can stay in the material world also. Yeah, well that prayer expresses that. So it's a very specific relationship with the Lord. Yeah.
They did that by approaching the devotee with the goal of assisting serving that devotee to serve Krishna.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Hare Krishna.